This Late Night Linux Family podcast is made possible by our patrons. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can join them. Support us on Patreon for access to ad-free episodes and early releases. That's latenightlinux.com/support. Hello and welcome to episode 109 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm May.
Welcome back all. Today I want to talk about backups. May, you have previously said that you were going to move from Synology to something that you hadn't decided yet. And Chris, I know you've been having some backup shenanigans. And Gary, you previously have moved away from Synology. So let's start with you. What did you end up with?
I ended up moving to TrueNAS Core, previously known as TrueNAS Scale.
Why do they have to keep changing the name of that? It's just so confusing.
I know. Every time someone says you're using TrueNAS Scale, I log into the server and I'm like, no, it's TrueNAS Core. Oh, wait. No, that is TrueNAS Scale. The Linux version of TrueNAS. The one that is the default when you click download.
And what hardware are you running that on?
So I now have 3 instances of TrueNAS. One is running on a Intel N150 ITX board that has both dual 2.5 gig and 10 gig Ethernet built in, as well as 6 standard SATA ports and an NVMe slot.
I did not expect it to have 10 gig.
Yeah, it does. And that's really useful for the second one of those identical motherboards that I bought to replace the N100 board that was in my Proxmox server. So those now have a direct 10 gig copper connection between them so that I can get 10 gig storage to VMs that are running in Proxmox.
Did you get that from AliExpress or something, that board?
Yeah, it was about 180 quid or something from AliExpress. So it wasn't super cheap, but also fairly reasonable for a board that has that level of functionality on.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't exploded yet.
It hasn't exploded yet. No, you're correct. Both of them are still running.
That must be really nice to have that speed of networking. Like, it must feel like it's almost local storage at that speed.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel just like local storage mounted into the VMs on the Proxmox host. And then, of course, because it has dual 2.5 gig, what that then meant was it was an opportunity to upgrade the switching I had. So it now has bonded 2.5 gig connections out to the rest of the network, which means that 2 machines can write at the full 2.5 gigabits as well. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
And you're using this to back up photos from your phone?
Well, among other things. Yes. That's the main primary storage that is here. Then I bought a second AU Star box, which is also an Intel N150. But that's a little kind of 2-drive stick in the top of it, like a toaster. And that is my offsite backup that sits at my parents' house. That is a much lower end box, but does still have 2.5 gig networking and stuff, which I'm not making use of because it's just a replication target. It literally sits there and receives ZFS snapshots. And then the third TrueNAS instance I have sits as a VM. Yes, I know I shouldn't do that. On the Proxmox host that I have at OVH. And I just replicate kind of app data, for want of a better term, up there on an hourly basis.
Is that TrueNAS's built-in replication that you're using?
Yes and no. So I'm doing a bunch of different stuff. So I'm using TrueNAS's built-in snapshotting and replication for the backups that go to other TrueNAS boxes. So I currently have 13 replication tasks and 13 periodic snapshot tasks, which take those snapshots and replicate the data on different cadences depending on which data sets they're in. I'm also using the TrueNAS built-in Cloud Sync stuff to back up things that I have in Google Drive locally. So that just runs a sync every hour of the latest stuff in Google Drive. Then a snapshot runs and it gets sent offsite as well. And then I'm also using rsync. So I've got a handful of rsync tasks that back up to a Lux encrypted extended 4 drive. And that's like really the stuff I absolutely care about. And that's the drive that I would grab should the worst happen to my house and I just needed an external disk that I could mount and get the data off of.
I've got a question about the Google Drive stuff. Does that convert your documents into actual docs rather than the official clients that just basically download a symlink?
Yes, it does convert them into docx, XLSX, PPTX, or whatever the relevant format is. And I have tested opening them in LibreOffice. They seem to open absolutely fine.
Right. I bet that's using rclone under the covers then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
I was going to say that's like a selling point for rclone when you use it in that workflow.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice just to have a copy of that data locally and be able to at least make sure that if I was to get kicked off of my Google account or something, it's at least there. And I've also got things like versioning, which I don't get for free in Google Drive, that I could use if I really wanted to. I think the only thing that I'm missing from that cloud sync that I did have on the Synology using their equivalent of whatever this cloud sync is email backup. So the Synology implementation of this also would back up Gmail. And every time you received an email, it pulled that as a .eml file locally. And that was quite nice to have just from I could delete everything from my Gmail periodically and not have to worry about it point of view.
Could do that with something like Thunderbird.
Yeah, I probably could, but it was nice just to have it built in and running on the same cadence as all of the other backups of the G Suite stuff.
So what about you, May? What did you do? Did you stick with Synology in the end?
Absolutely not. So at this point, Synology did walk back some of their drive certification stuff. Kind of. They say that until they can get more drives certified, they're not going to make you use certified drives. But at this point, I think the ship has sailed. It's clear that their motives are somewhere else, not the home user. That's fine.
Yeah, I think for me, it was when they did the drive stuff was the straw that broke the camel's back. But there was a whole bunch of stuff previously, like removing codec support. I had it where they refused to reactivate a license for their camera station software, even though it was a perpetual license and needed to be reinstalled because of a hardware failure on their part. There was a whole bunch of stuff, and I think you're right. Even though they've walked it back, it's just not enough.
Let's not forget them getting within 3 months of their only release of their software being end of life before they release the next version. Also, it's not 8.0 like they were promising. It was 7.3 instead of 7.2. So, good job. Or is it 7.4? Whatever. Point is, no, they're really disappointing at this point. I went with basically the same thing. I bought an AU Star AMD R7 box and put, a good 32 gigs of RAM in it for ZFS and put it all together. 12 terabytes of storage. I'm actually pretty happy with it. I was running a Debian box for a while, just a desktop that I had lying around. I slapped a couple disks in and brought up ZFS and saw what I could do with it. I got image running, I got C-file running, and I got them going over Tailscale using a Tailscale proxy in Docker, which works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. So each container has its own hostname on my Tailscale network, which, yeah, that's great. Being able to go to image.thing.net and actually get there. It's kind of like the old Quick Connect that I was used to from Synology, which is probably terribly insecure, but actually not insecure this time. I did end up going with TrueNAS in the end, so I migrated all my stuff from Debian to TrueNAS on the AU Star box, because while I really do like the control of having a CLI available for things, and I was using Gym software to take snapshots, send snapshots, replicate snapshots everywhere, I don't know, just the lack of discoverability of the CLI does kind of hurt when you're not familiar with something. And I was more comfortable seeing, okay, these are the replication tasks. These are the snapshot tasks. They happen on this schedule, and it's not some. If you have the cron job in the right place, then it happens, but it doesn't happen by default, kind of thing. It's much better having the GUI, in my opinion.
And just not having to set up stuff like an SMTP relay and send mail to get that to work. I want to get an email when a job fails. And having to set up a bunch of stuff to get that to work is just not a thing I can be bothered with.
Exactly. I mean, I understand that a lot of people do have that infrastructure in place, but I sure don't. And I have a job to do that isn't managing the storage. So I'd rather be messing with the things that I actually want to do and then have the storage kind of quietly sitting and humming along, which I've been able to do with this setup. Image and C-file are great. I was really uncomfortable with C-file to be kind of a Google Drive replacement. I was using Synology Drive for that. C-file is a great replacement. The sync is very fast. And Chris found a utility that you can use to take just the C file directory, which is just a bunch of content addressable hashes. You can take that and put it back into the original directory structure just by reading over that document without the database present. And that was the big thing that I was concerned about, was losing the database and then losing all of my data. It seems like that's not a problem. So I'm okay with C file.
It's funny, you lot with your GUIs and your email alerts and everything. I just set up Ubuntu, install ZFS, install Sanoid, set up my Sanoid template, set up my cron job with my Syncoid jobs, and it's just simple. I don't need a GUI for that. So I've got my NAS, which is like the main source of truth, which happens to actually be Ubuntu because it's plugged into my TV as well. But that's where my main storage is, and then that replicates to my on-site, which is an old HP box that I think, Chris, you recommended. It's like a G2 something?
Yeah, 8th gen, like a kind of office medium tower form factor with they're all over eBay.
Yeah.
For really cheap.
And then that replicates to the offsite, which was offsite, is currently on-site, but by the time you hear this, will be in Manchester with any luck. And it's all just ZFS. And I do actually have an ext4 drive, a 2.5-inch USB drive plugged into the NAS, and that's my grab and run drive, basically. It's not encrypted because I don't care. It's not that important. I want to be able to just plug it into any machine and read it, essentially.
I had that set up on the Debian box, but I was just thinking, I don't feel super confident that I have this working right. I wrote the Syncoid jobs myself and everything. And this seems like it's working, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a me thing, but I like the thing that says running, failed, succeeded on the homepage.
Yeah, I quite like being able to just go and open the data protection tab, I think they call it. And if it's a sea of green, it's probably fine. And then I'll just go and test it periodically.
Well, I do have direct access to two of the world's leading ZFS experts.
Yes,
so
it's true.
Maybe that helps.
I mean, that's probably at least part of it. I do send my snapshots off-site to a box that I rented from OVH, and that's working pretty well too. It turns out it's less expensive to rent a box on OVH for as much storage as I needed as it was to find that much storage basically anywhere, except for, hosting at a friend's place, which, well, I don't really have a friend who wants to plug in my server at their house, so, is what it is.
Yeah, that can be tricky. And also, what if that friend's circumstances suddenly change or whatever? It was surprisingly difficult for me to actually find somewhere to put my offsite box. And in the end, I just badgered my brother into letting me put it in his house. He's not very happy about it, but what's he going to do?
Yeah, I certainly had the same thing, but that all went south. So, relationships with humans are weird and sometimes they go badly. And so you need to be careful with that.
I could put it very close to where I live, but I feel like it's too close. Ideally, I'd like it to be the other side of London so I could go and drive there. And driving to Manchester and back would not be ideal, but I like to think that I could replicate back the very crucial stuff that I needed if I needed it.
Yeah, my backup being at my parents' house is far from what I would like because it's on the same part of the power grid, probably on the same part of whatever fiber node the ISP has around here. It's not great. There's a bunch of stuff that's shared that I wish wouldn't be, which is kind of why I put the most critical stuff in OVH as well. Not that I should really trust OVH any more than anyone else.
It's not like they're going to have a fire or anything.
Oh, and then, I also have an on-site external disk that I replicate to for on-site stuff.
A single disk.
Yeah, it's a single disk.
I would definitely watch the scrubs on that.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, you've had quite the rejig since you got the Esprimo box and everything, right?
Well, I mean, I loved it so much, I couldn't help myself and I bought another one. Although, remember I said the only thing I could get away with would be a thin client size form factor. So I bought a 2 litre, which is very uncommon form factor. So imagine two of the micro optiplexes stacked on top of one another. So it's an Esprimo Q series, but it was like really, really cheap. It was 58 quid on eBay with a 9th Gen i5.
Wow.
It didn't have any storage in it, and it had some RAM. But I basically built it up, cost about 180 quid all in, for a dual SATA Enterprise SSD mirror, 480 gig, plus an OS drive and 32 gigs of RAM. And I've put Proxmox on it. So my idea is that eventually the bigger NAS, which I haven't decided yet, it's still running Ubuntu, but I may well run either Proxmox or TrueNAS. I haven't decided yet. That's the other Esprimo, which I got for the challenge. I want to turn that into a NAS, much more just storage based, and start putting everything that is disparate at the moment onto this Proxmox box. Interesting that you say, Joe, I'm struggling with the ClickUps factor. To give you a small example, I set a Pi-hole in an LXC container, which is great. It worked really well, but I couldn't get it to connect to the internet. And I was racking my brains. I went into the CLI. I was like, the interface is down. I can't get it to come up. I hadn't checked DHCP or configured an IP address in the GUI for the LXC. And you have to change your mindset to be graphical user interface first. And in fact, if you go against that, you can break Proxmox very easily. And I also want to beef up the storage in the NAS so I can take more. Now, for my offsite, like Phelim, I'm a big fan of Borg Backup. And I can now, with Borgmatic, take a snapshot of my ZFS pool, and then I can run Borg against that. Now, it's not quite as good as ZFS replication, but it's cheaper per terabyte for offsite storage that way. Either Borg Base, which I pay for now, is $80 for a terabyte for a year, or Hetzner, it's like 5 terabytes for something really stupidly cheap and a monthly fee. But it's all in flux, basically. The box is up, it's running Proxmox. I have a Proxmox backup server running on the main NAS, but I just have a Pi-hole on it. That's it. Because I suddenly became really, really, really busy. And I haven't set up anything beyond that. But I have a plan. I feel like I'm the affordable baby brother of Gary's setup with his 10 gig NICs and his 2.5 gig NICs. Like, mine is really like, what can you get for 200 storage and everything all done? And that's what I managed to do.
I feel like you managed to do the responsible one.
Yeah, I think you did do the responsible one. And certainly power consumption-wise, I was quite jealous of the figures you had, despite the N100 being a low-power, quote-unquote, chip.
Yeah, the N100 isn't quite as low power as you think it would be. I remember when I got my little mini PC, I did some tests with that, and I was a bit disappointed, really. I mean, it wasn't using loads, but it was certainly no Wise 5070.
Well,
it's not consuming like 3 or 4 watts like the Wise 5070 was.
you have quite a bit of storage attached, but you're right. I was impressed. I plugged in the Shelly plug so I could take some fairly accurate measurements. And bearing in mind, I've got a 9th Gen i5, 32 gigs of RAM as two 1.35 volt SODIMMs, 2 enterprise 2.5-inch SATA drives, 480 gig, and a 256 gig NVMe. At idle, it's 10 to 12 watts maximum.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's really low.
And I promise you, the Shelly plug, is the reason I spent more money on it is they're really well calibrated, and I wanted to make sure it was fairly accurate.
Not like the one I got, which was the cheapest one I could off eBay, I think. There's got no smarts or anything. I just plug it in and it just says 5 watts, so I have to just trust it.
Yeah, that's very much what mine is. I think mine was from Lidl or Aldi or something.
Yeah.
So mine's plugged into Grafana and all the bells and whistles, but it's been a great way to audit what I run in VMs and containers as well. So I managed to, I put one of my old VMs on it and spun it up, and it did push the power consumption up quite a bit because it was a remote desktop version of Ubuntu Mate, I think. And I was like, hang on, I'm using this basically for a web browser and geo relocation. Like, this is absurd. I know a lot more than when I first set this up, and I've been using it just because I'm lazy. So I was like, no, I can just run this in DistroBox with Gluton, which is a Podman container that basically VPNs your traffic like a router. And suddenly I was doing everything I wanted in like no resources. So that's what I've got ahead of me. It's basically an audit of the terribly glued together Docker Compose / Incus LXC disparate, not well configured setup to LXC, a proper reverse proxy, replication using Proxmox backup server, snapshots with Borgmatic, and then having everything reasonably replicated, and definitely an improvement on what I've got.
So why don't you use ZFS replication? Why are you using Borg?
That's for the offsite element. So ZFS replication on-site, I can do that between two boxes, although...
Oh, because you're just paying for the service.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
with Borg Base and Hetzner storage box, you have a storage endpoint that supports, standard protocols like SSH, but also Restic and Borg, whereas it's not a ZFS target, and the price reflects that. If you use rsync.net, I think it's significantly more per terabyte. Now, both services back your storage with ZFS, and there's a snapshotting system, but you're not interfacing with it directly. So Borg Base is not quite rsnapshot or rsync. Borg is reasonably good, but yeah, it's not quite the same. And like you said, Joe, an offsite backup location is actually harder to find than you would think. Really, you need one of us, actually, is the ideal person, rather than like my mum or my sister, which is sort of fine, but you want like remote hands maybe occasionally and stuff like that.
Yeah, like what am I going to do when one of the disks dies? I'm going to have to talk my brother through it on a fucking video call. That's not going to be much fun, is it?
Exactly. Whereas if I pay Borg Base, they handle that. Yes, it's not ZFS. So it's all about balancing all of these things out. And I also have local replication to a single disk and the kind of pick up in a fire and run stuff. It can always be improved. That's the thing. I try to sort of put the computer down at the end of the evening and go, it's not perfect, but it's okay.
I don't have that sense. I mean, I sound really smug and I'm really setting myself up for a fall here, aren't I? But I feel like because I spent so long talking to Jim and Alan about this and setting it up properly and, saying to them, I've got this issue, I've got that issue, and them telling me how to fix that, I feel like I have got it under control. Like once this offsite backup actually goes offsite, I'm feeling fairly confident that my data is going to be okay.
I think as well, what you said, Joe, you like the simplicity of Ubuntu and everything. One of the reasons I actually set the Proxmox box up, as well as for consolidating storage and backups, is because I started playing with stuff like Kubernetes locally and spinning up even a fairly simple cluster of, high availability workers and storage. You can do it on Proxmox, and there's a lot of great tutorials, but every single machine I ran it on here was just completely running out of puff really, really quickly. So I've built this box not to run that as production, but I can spin up that scale of things and it can handle it if necessary. And I think that is part of the attraction for me, is that it's really up and down ephemeral containers, VMs and everything, whilst the base operating system has a reasonable level of throw away and pick up again. And if you've got everything replicated and everything, then it's fine. But yeah, I was struggling with screenless laptops and thinking, should I upgrade this screenless laptop with more RAM? I'm going and saying, no, I should build something that is functional and serves a purpose as well. And of course, you can do all of that with Incus or with Docker Compose, all of the things like that. But Proxmox has just a few extra tweaks, like setting up templates with cloud in it and your SSH keys. And it's just got all these little massaging features that you start to realize you might want when you go in that direction.
Of course, there's Incus OS now as well, which is an immutable distro with ZFS support.
Yeah, that's it. I think isn't it like declaratively configured or something? I've only just seen the release for it. I mean, the Incus project is great. I had real trouble getting Pi-hole running in LXC directly on Ubuntu. When I installed Incus and then just did it, it's a bit like LXD, of course, the forebear. it just made all the networking and storage and everything super simple. So Stefan's got a great project there.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been May.
See you later.